Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you guys for joining me again. My name is Wilkie and I'm here with the first Kritika Reboot video, and today's topic is going to be differences between Masse's version and Kritika Reboot. Now keep in mind that I quit Masse's version not shortly before the service closed down, so there might be things they implemented further on where I didn't even play Masse's version anymore. So there might be things you already know because you played the version until the very end. But for me, those were the differences that I noticed when playing Kritika Reboot. Now, let's start with the elephant in the room straight away. At the bottom here, you should notice that there's something missing, or rather, we should be very glad that it's missing. The so-called rest points. Now, this was a system that was in place to kind of limit people's progress in terms of how much they could play. While technically it didn't limit you of how much you could play, it just made farming, drop rates, and everything incredibly bad after you consumed your rest points. So it was pretty much futile to play on the same character, and you either had to resort to take alts, or you simply were farming very inefficiently. So there's that, but that is a very welcome change for me. You don't have to worry about alts. You can play as much as you want, whether it be 1 hour every day, whether it be 10 hours a day. You don't have to worry about not being able to farm with your same character. Now on to the next biggest change for me is that at the very end, once the NPC's down, you will see that I would like to call it dungeon NPC is spawning, and what that allows you to do is generally you can say that Kritika Reboot's progression and everything is a lot better and more streamlined, but every dungeon at the end will have this NPC which allows you to accept finish quests where it eliminates the need of running around in town and things like that. While it does kind of take away a little bit of the, well, I don't want to call it home feeling, because really Kritika is only about running dungeons and then going back to town. But you don't really have to visit the NPCs by yourself. You can simply just rush down to the dungeons, which is a very welcome change if you don't really care about story. In generally, it makes progression a lot easier, a lot faster, and a lot more convenient. Now, for another different mechanic or change, or I'd like to call them colored stones. Now, I'm not going to go into in-depth of the mechanics, or rather what you can all do with them. Let's just say you get 3 colored ones, which is blue, green, and red ones. You can use them for a variety of options, either purchase enhancement materials, different type of equipment, in generally things that will help you progress. On top of that, you have the gold ones, which work a little bit different, and you can either choose to sell them, which depending on the current market situation, that's not where I wanted to go. You can make sort of good amount of gold with it if you really are in a pinch. As you can see, cheapest one currently are 175k. So if you are in desperate need of some gold, you can try selling them. The other option would be to get one of the RNG boxes and test your luck with these Lilith's random boxes. I used two. Unfortunately, I ended up with a very poop reward that you need 5 of them to open a chest, and I got 2 in return. So obviously there is RNG with it, but generally this is a very different mechanic. You will end up farming those in late game because they will allow you to keep progressing your character without having to spend money on the cash shop or generally running out of stuff to do. And for another change is that the enhancement system has changed a little bit. Now I will use, I don't know, probably this one to just show you what it looks like. So what's the same, or rather what stayed the same, is you go to the anvil and you can press enhancing, so nothing really changed there. However, there are no more hammers, which means you don't really have to worry about durability, or yeah, it's pretty much no durability that is going down. As you can see, it just goes up as per usual. There's really nothing different there. It works as it used to on Masse's version. As I said, no hammers. Instead, though, I will show you this once we get actually to a point which I might not actually reach, but I will explain it to you in just a second. before I run out of enhancement materials, which very well might happen, which probably will happen actually. So before I actually go and click on here, instead of hammers, what you have to use are so-called safeguard fuses. And the reason for that is, after a certain enhancement level, I think for now it's once you try to go to +10, your items have a chance to be destroyed. And in order to not have them destroyed, you will use these safeguards, and then you click enhance, as per usual. So this is a very drastic change. I don't exactly know how it plays out in late game. Usually most people sit around with +12, +13 gear. I'm not sure if it turns out to be much worse in maximum enhancement or not compared to the hammers we had in Almas's version. It definitely allows you to enhance earlier equipment much easier and without hassle. As long as you have the enhancement stones and the gold, you're free to try it, and you don't really have to worry about using your durability hammers, your fix-it hammers, in order to get the durability back up. So I think it's a very welcome change. As I said, I don't know exactly how much it plays into late game or how much it changes in late game, but for now, especially in early game and mid game, this is definitely much better. Now, for another drastic change, which was the most, how should I say this, the most welcome one for me, is that, as you can see, we just found a piece of equipment, which is a set piece, which means you generally find a lot more pieces of equipment. And what the kicking deal is about this, as you can see, this one's +10. So not only do you get very, well, it's not obviously best in slot gear you're finding by doing normal dungeons, but you find very good equipment. And what's even better is it can be enhanced. As you can see, I just found shoes that are +10, and we'll do this dungeon and you will see that there is a whole lot of variety in terms of items dropping, which obviously means you won't be able to find your full set during the first run, but as you can see, we just found another 2 pieces. A +7 armor I could use potentially, and another +12 helmet. So as you can see, gear progression is so much easier compared to Onmas's version. Never until very late game have I hit any sort of well, it's combat power called here, I think. Yes, it was called combat rating in Onmas's version, but it's the same deal. Never have I hit a wall where I was not able to continue or progressing on because I did not have the right gear until very late game. This is obviously where the farming starts, where you then have to repeat dungeons in order to increase your gear. But up until level 70 and everything before that, you don't really have to worry about gear whatsoever. You will be handed with new gear every 5 levels, and once you reach sorta almost late game, I'd like to call them, you can see that items drop like mad here. I think I found like, what, 8 or 9 items by now. And most of them are enhanced, some of them are not enhanced to the full. Others, for example, this ring here is +12. So this is a very easy way for you to keep progressing in the game and not having to worry about anything in terms of equipment. This is a very welcome change because Almas's version had some very cruel breakpoints where it was almost impossible for people to progress because they did not have the right gear. They either ended up having to party using a lot of resurrection stones or having to resort to the cash shop in order to progress further, and this is definitely not the case here. So you are very much able to get to end game within a matter of probably 15 to 20 hours, and you don't have to worry about your gear up until the absolute late game. Another change for me was the Etherforce change. So I don't fully know how it turns out at the very end here, but what I can tell you is it doesn't work like in the old one where you just do your daily dungeons and keep on increasing, but instead you unlock these force crystals, I guess I'd like to call them, and then you still collect force points, but you will spend them and try to increase some of the stats here. Now, this is a little bit, or not a little bit, this is actually heavy RNG, as you can see. We got an increase here, And the same applies here. I could unlock this for 2 million and start throwing my points in here as well. But really, there is it's definitely a complete different system from what it was in Almas Entertainment. I don't exactly know where the Etherforce fusion stones are. You can also use recalculation scrolls, and once you can see, if I use this one, the progression is much higher compared to when I use the low one here. Not only are the rates a lot worse, it can also downgrade, which is obviously a bummer, but I mean that's really what it is. And recalculation scrolls can be obtained through the colored stones I showed you earlier, so this is really not much of an issue. Now on to the other, probably second biggest change for me coming to Kritika Reboot is we have imprints. Now, generally, it's a very easily explained. You have your three, I'd like to call them large imprints or major imprints, or what they called in the when you find them, when you find the scrolls, which kind of allows you to pick a set and drastically change how certain effects work. I'm just giving an example. Obviously, this is for Doomblade only. Other classes have obviously different imprints. And you have the ranged one, which was or still is, I don't know, very popular in Korea. This is what I'm currently using. Then you have the one that resets or grants you a curse when you land a critical blow. So maybe you've seen videos where Doomblades almost, or yeah, almost, or even actually do have infinite right clicks or cutting waves because they generate curses whenever they crit. And then you have it's called Wave Soul here. I'm not entirely sure what this one does here, so this one is something I have to try. Generally though, how the imprint system works, you have a daily dungeon that you can run in order to obtain them. It is, as per usual, RNG, but every, I think, 5 days you are able to pick certain imprints. So ultimately, after probably a week or two, you will most likely have the large imprints you want, and then you have low, mid, and high, and this is very simple. They are always the same, as you can see. This one's called Mistflow Breaking Roam, reduce cooldown, same here, same here. The low one has the lowest value, 0.5, mid has a bit of better value, pardon me, and high obviously having the best value. You can just like the large ones, you can find them, but it is RNG, but you can also create them with imprint pieces. Now the kicker here is creating a small one is very cheap, creating a mid one is a little bit more expensive, creating a high one is, well, I cannot actually show you what it takes. It costs 380 pieces compared to the 38 a mid one consumes. So creating high imprints is a lot more expensive, but ultimately, once you have the imprints you're looking for, all you gotta do is repeat the dungeon, and once in a while you will have enough points to create more higher imprints of the skills you want, and ultimately you will be equipped with the imprints you want. Last but not least, there are two things I'd like to mention. For those of you who are coming from Masse's version like I did, late game looks a bit different. You have different areas. There is no Starhenge, for example, but instead you are in Windy Highlands camp. Now, one thing that bugs me quite a bit is that the translation in this version is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. Keep in mind that it probably is that the Korean devs who also published the game either translated the game themselves or had someone who was sorta capable in English but really was on budget or something. A lot of the dialogues are... This one's actually fairly good, but if you take a look at the event tab, what do we have here? We're presenting helpful items for level. This is per character basis event. Reward is going to be distributed to mailbox expiration. Please to the reward box. There are many more of these obviously typos or mistranslations, but it doesn't really hurt the game. If you know what you're doing or you played the game a little bit, you will still be able to find your way around. Just keep in mind that the translation is a little bit off and at times more or less confusing. So there's that. Anyways, this concludes my first video on Kritika Reboot, where I explained or talked about the changes that I noticed. I'm sure there are more changes. As I said, I'm not at the very end of the quest lines yet, so I'm fairly certain that there is more I haven't seen yet. I didn't cover certain mechanics like fishing and stuff like that, but generally these are the major changes that I have, and I have to say Kritika Reboot plays a lot smoother, a lot better. The progression system is a lot more streamlined. You don't have to worry about gear so early. Enhancing works a little bit different, but generally you are able to play for most of your time without having to worry about anything in terms of gear. Once you're at the end though, then it starts to become the normal grind. You look for pieces of equipment you want to change or exchange or swap out. You farm them, and that's really it. This is where the game repeats itself, but really if you played Kritika before, you do know that this is a dungeon runner at core. So you do end up running the same dungeon multiple times in order to get the items you want, so this should not be anything new. Anyways, this is all for the first video. If you have anything else, if I have missed something you are thinking is very important for this kind of video, feel free to let me know. As usual, I'd like to spark a discussion in the comments, so if there's anything I missed, anything I explained wrong, or something you want to add, feel free to do so, and we will either pin it at the top or put it into the description, depending on what it is or how much content we're actually getting. Anyways, this is all for it, and I hopefully will catch you guys next time.